everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. The topic here is Profusion. If that name sounds familiar, Profusion palettes seem to be lurking around in the drugstores every year around this time. I feel like Walgreens is the main place where I've turned up products from this brand before. They've got this whole massive amount of holiday palettes, and they might not even really say out loud Profusion in big letters on them. They just look like kind of generic holiday type drugstore palettes, right? But then you look closely and it's like, okay, it's this Profusion brand that's putting it out. Well, they seem to be officially coming out in Target now with what's been sent to me. And so I want to go through everything for you in this video, try some things on, and let you know what I think. Okay, so I've got my foundation, concealer, and powder on right now, and we're gonna jump into this little brow palette. So you open this guy up, and it has a hair in it. Don't worry, it's my hair. I've already been playing with this, but this is the 8-piece brow makeup palette, it says. So all your powders are across the top. There is like a beige highlight powder right here, and then all of these brow shades, they range from medium brown to soft brown, chocolate, and ash brown. Soft brown has a little more warmth to it, and there's also an ash brown brow pencil, and then you've also got a little double-ended guy here with the angled brush and the spoolie. So I think what I'm gonna do is actually use a little bit of the pencil first, and this is actually an okay pencil, at least for my coloring and whatnot. It's just kind of one of those universal taupey colored pencils. It's nothing fabulous, like it's a little on the dry side, but I do kind of like that. I don't like when pencils deposit like way too much product in my brows because I've got a lot of brow hair. So just a little fill in with the pencil, or you could totally skip the pencil if you wanted to. And then I'm gonna take my angled brush here and go into the wax. This is just a quick little demo of how I would use wax and powder to go through my brows. And I used to do this all the time. If you remember the Too Faced Brow Envy palette, that's basically what that palette was. It had the little wax and then all the powders, and it is a really, I think, easy way to fill in your brows, especially if you're just getting started with any sort of brow fill-in process. I think powders and wax is a really great way to do it. And then I'm going to use this medium brown right here. This is a really taupey shade, and I'm going to start with that again with just that angled side of the brush and just go through my brows like this. And then around like my arch to the end of my brow, I might go toward a deeper shade like chocolate. And then you do have that little spoolie wand at the end to brush everything through. This is mostly a cool palette, and really beyond just this shade right here, I think it's a little more suited to brunettes. Unless they make another whole shade of this palette that I'm not aware of, but they make it seem like it's just an 8-piece brow palette with no real identification as blonde or brunette or whatever. So for me, this filled in my brows just fine. I mean, the pencil was good. It's not gonna be like as finely tipped as a Brow Wiz type pencil. It's just a standard pencil, so very basic there, but the powders are nicely pigmented. They will show up in your brows, and the wax does help them cling. And also you do have this shade right here, which is a very pigmented matte powder if you wanted to use that as more of an underbrow highlight. I'm going to be using eyeshadows today, but that is in there. Brow palette, by the way, is $6.99, and now we're going to move on to this $9.99 blush and bronze palette. So a pretty large size palette here, and the overall theme on these palettes seems to be like a rose gold print and trim, and they do include a little brush here. It's actually not unusable. It's sort of a fluffy, soft, not too dense brush that maybe you could use for some contour or some highlight. I probably wouldn't use this for blush, but this is included in this palette, and also I think the highlighter palette. Now I know when I did my Tarte video, I talked about a lot of blush palettes, and I sort of complained like, it's only blush, and I wish they put in some other things to make the palettes a little bit more multitasking or just do a little more for me. And a lot of you guys said in the comments section, like, if it's a blush palette, I only want blush. So to each their own on that standpoint, but the reason why I do kind of like this palette here is because they have blushes, and they have a good range of them too. They've got like neutrally kind of blushes, more rosy ones, a peach, a bright pink. You've got kind of a goldeny highlight, something that says light bronzer and medium bronzer. So it's more than just a blush palette, and so I kind of like that. I'm going to go into the light bronzer here and just take this kind of around my hairline. I might dip in, yeah, I'm going to dip in a little bit to that medium bronzer as well. I feel like I kind of have to use a lot of these. That's the thing. The bronzers are not necessarily a little goes a long way product for me with these palettes, and it kind of surprised me because the blushes are that way. Like, they're really pigmented. You know, it doesn't take much to stand out. And there's another palette that they have that combines like a lot of different things, and I thought, wow, the bronzers are really subtle in here. These in this palette turned out to be a little bit deeper, but I still kind of have to build them up more than I expected. It's almost a feeling as though when I put them on and buff them in with the brush, somehow I'm blending them away instead of blending them into my skin, you know? Then for blush, I think I'm going to use this color right here called Lush, just because I think that's sort of one of those exactly how does that show up type shades. So I'll show you. It's very pretty. Just a really soft kind of dusty peach color. See, isn't that a pretty look there? I love that. And then I think I might do just a touch of a pink pop right on the apple of the cheeks with First Date. Okay, so there's that. I'm kind of impressed by the blushes, but not in love with the bronzers. The highlight in here is pretty, but I'm not going to be using that right now because there is an actual highlighter palette that I'm going to go to. Cue the highlighter palette. This one is called Strobe and Glow. Exact same like shape and design as the other palette. It also does have that little brush in there, like we said, but here is just a series of different highlights, and we've got light ones, medium ones, deeper ones, some bronzy kinds of colors. Here's a pinky toned one. This is the only one down here, this one called Glazed, that seems to really have like some glitter in it. If you swatch that out, you will definitely see the glitter. It's not really thick glitter, but I mean, it's glitter. Fairy Dust up here is kind of interesting because it has this sort of iridescent, like purpley blue look to it. Obsessed is gorgeous because instead of being as metallic as most of the others, it's a softer, more pearly highlight. And I think Sugar Crush is really wearable as well. And it has a real like goldeny brightness, like a brighter white gold, if that makes sense. So what the heck am I gonna choose here? I think I'm gonna choose Fairy Dust, at least to start. Actually, no, I'm gonna use Obsessed first because this one's more subtle, and then I can layer up on this to let you see more. But Obsessed is really pretty if you like that softer, more pearly glow. But see, there's still definitely a glow happening there. I mentioned this in my blending video, but I kind of like to buff my highlights in a little bit more. I think it gives them a more natural look, less like just powder sitting on the skin. So Obsessed is really pretty, and I mean, the pigmentation on these is really nice. Like, there are some super poppin' highlights in this palette. I guess the question is, do I need a palette this big just chock full of highlights? My answer to that question is not really, but it's $9.99, and if you just want to do some experimenting, you might like it. Okay, so that's what Obsessed looks like. So really soft and beautiful. And then I think I want to use a little bit of Fairy Dust just to show you what kind of look we get here, because like we said, this one has like that iridescent kind of pinky brightness. That is a fun shade, not gonna lie. Ooh, pretty. And I mean, for these highlights to show up in this directive lighting, sometimes you almost want to be in a dim lighting and then look at the highlight, because that's when it really has a chance to pop. You know, it hits what light is there, and then it really pops off your face more than your other makeup does. Meanwhile, I sit here with 3 lights in front of my face and expect my highlight to just really bounce off my skin. Can't argue with that highlight. I do really like it. It's a pretty selection of stuff in here. I think you got to be pretty like highlighter obsessed to want this entire palette of 9 different shades. It's a pretty large palette too, just keep that in mind. Now I'm going to bounce ahead to lips. I've got this Mixed Metals Lips Kit, and it's 2 long-lasting metal matte lip creams and a matte lip liner. And I was playing around with this a little bit yesterday, and they are pretty long-wearing lip creams. And the idea of metal matte usually really turns me off, honestly. Like, I don't like the idea of that metallic finish getting into all the lines and crevices and then looking totally dry, you know, on the lips. But this one actually doesn't end up feeling super uncomfortable. I would say the feel of these liquid lipsticks is kind of similar to the Tarte, maybe not even as drying as that, yet they're not sticky either. So if you like this kind of thing, you might want to take note. The kit is $4.99, and I'm going to start off by using this matte lip liner in Berry Vamp, and this is retractable, and I'm just going to use this to get a little base color going on my lips. And I'm doing lips before eyes right now because I know the lips will end up being kind of deep, and it'll sort of set the tone for the eyes and let me know how dark I want to go there. And I do have a little lip balm on right now as well, and that's helping the lip liner glide on a little more smoothly. First, I'm going to use this shade called Metal Vamp, and so this is just a rich, like reddish berry metallic, and it feels super thin going on. And I think before that hits the full dry down, I'm going to go to this other shade called Metal Berry. And I'm just going to get a little bit of that off on my finger and dab right here in the center. This shade, I think, is where most of the metallic look comes from. For me, this isn't the finish of product that I'd probably wear all the time, to be honest with you, because once it does dry down and you've worn it for, say, a couple hours, I feel like the dryness really does kind of show on your lips. But I do think the color tone is pretty, and if you like metal matte, I mean, it's not uncomfortable on the lips. So for eyes, I'm going to be using this Sultry palette. This is the same size as those big blush and highlight palettes were, and we've got a really wide shade selection happening here. Everything from jewel tones, warm colors, different finishes. We've got some mattes, some really metallic shades, some deep matte neutrals over here. So I think I'm going to start out actually use the brush provided, which is a soft blending brush and also a flat brush for packing on shadow. And I'm going to use this color down here called Ideal. And I've already put on some Milani eyeshadow primer, but this is going to sort of give me a little base color. Sometimes I remember to do this, and it helps the rest of the shadow look go on a bit more smoothly, just having a little bit of a light neutral shade all over. And then I'm going to go into Ecstatic, which has a little bit of sparkle, but overall it's one of those matte shades, you know, where they've just tossed in a little bit of shimmer. And I'm going to work this shade into my crease. See, once I get it on my eye, I can't see any of that sparkle anymore. Sometimes I think brands just do that to make stuff look good in the palette or be a little more eye-catching in the palette. And I'm just shearing that shade out here just a bit. And then I'm going to go back to the color that I used sort of as base shadow, and I'm going to use that around the edge and under the brow. Then I think I want to go into this color called Zing with my flat brush. It's a kind of dark to medium warm brown. Get a little bit of that on my lid here, outer corner. Still just kind of building up the base of this look. And these mattes apply nicely. They blend nicely. It's kind of surprising pigmentation to see out of a palette like this where you're used to kind of like scrubbing into a shade, picking up as much as possible. Here I'm definitely going in, tapping off excess, and then having plenty to get color payoff on my eyes. Then I'm going to use a little bit of Nimble here, this plummy shade, and really get that going on the lid. And we'll see how much actual purple we're getting out of this. I mean, it's not like a bright purple shade, obviously. There's also a shimmery purple as well that I might work in here. Just wedging it up into the crease a little bit as I pat it on the lid too. And then blend that up into my warmth. I think I will try a little bit of Bewitched, which is right below Nimble. This shade is not really patting on as fully as the mattes were. Like the shimmer, I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe I need to use my finger? I don't know, you'd think it would have just as much, if not more intensity, but it doesn't really. Now I want to do kind of a splash of a shimmery shade here. I'm going to go into Celestial, and we're going to see how that works here on my inner corner. Definitely got some chunks in my eye there. Honestly, I feel like for as shimmery as it looks, quick swatch there on my finger, for as shimmery as it looks in that swatch, it's feeling a little dull and flaky on my eyes. Like, I don't think that did any favors for the look. I'm going to go in with maybe a little bit of Snazzy. This is more of a pearly, satiny finish shade. and see if I can salvage what's going on there, because I just wasn't nuts about the way that came off. That's the thing about shadows, you just don't know until you apply them exactly what they're going to do, because they could be gorgeous in a swatch, but not always pack on the way you expect. Going in with the Zing again, and I'm going to work this up into my outer corner. I'm trying to just make a little bit more of a thing of my outer corner, since I'm just not that impressed with the light shimmery inner corner. And then I'll go back in with a little more nimble, because I do like when plum meets with a warm brown. And then this blending brush on the end of their double-ended brush works pretty well. The flat side is decent too. And then I think I'll do a little bit of Wonder on my lower lash line, and I'm using that Real Techniques, the smaller of the two brushes from the Eye Pop duo. I talked a lot about these in my Get Ready With Me video. I used them there too, but this is just a real standout from some of the new Real Techniques brushes that I used. And then maybe a hint more plum just on the outside. It gives you just this instantly smoky lower lash line, but yeah, it doesn't go outside of the zone, you know, where I want shadow to be, so it's really good for that. Love. I'm doing just a little bit of light colored liner here on the lower inner rim. This is my Wet n Wild Ultimate Brow Highlight. I just love what it does when I pop that in there. If I'm going for that kind of a look, you know, if I want it to be an even darker look, I can just put black in there. Then I'm going to bounce over to a different kit here. There's a Mixed Metals eye kit. I'll just pull out this tray. You'll be able to see it better. There are a couple of liquid shadows, a loose pigment, and an eyeliner. And so far I've just swatched these on my hand, and I can tell that there's a lot of locked-in staying power with these. They'll start to smudge a little bit when some moisture hits them, but as far as just your hand being dry, wiping across them, they don't move. Actually, some of this lighter of the two liquid shades, maybe I'll just try some of that in my inner corner here and just see how it goes. This is a Rose Gold Trio, so I'm just going to put that on there and kind of blend it out. I don't know, that might have helped a little bit. But what I really wanted to use from this kit was the eyeliner, because I wanted to see how it would sort of go over the top of my shimmery lid. It's a really juicy feeling eyeliner pen. It's almost so juicy I feel like it's running around a little bit, you know, like it's kind of hard to control it. Never thought I'd say a liner pen was too juicy. As far as these metallic liquids, I think if you're going to use them in a real full-on sense, they'd be prettier, especially the deeper of the two. This more berry color is very pretty. Then I'm going to go back to my palette, get a little of this black called Nightlife. First off, I love to just have something that pulls my wing more like into my look and just makes it seem a little more finished, but also the edge of that liner is just looking a little rough on the bottom, so this is a nice way to just smooth that out. So it is nice that they've incorporated a really nice dark black shade in the palette. There's also a dark brown. So now with some mascara and lashes on there, there's the finished look. I would say my overall impression of what's happening with this Profusion line that seems to have been sort of revamped and reintroduced now at Target, I would say better than expected overall. I mean, the prices on this stuff, these kits, we're talking like right around the $10 mark or less for the smaller things. For me to be this pleased with, you know, the blush, the highlight, overall, I think the shadow look was good. I just think these palettes are going to have some hits and misses in them. And for a palette as big as that Sultry palette that I put on here, you know, the mattes were really good. And I've noticed that throughout some of their other palettes. Like, they've got a really strong, soft matte formula, but then some of the shimmers will feel almost creamy to the touch, but not as good in application. And then some shimmers will just be great. So it's really tricky and kind of hard to know. But this little info card that I have here says October 5th, 2017, ProfusionCosmetics.com, October 13th at Target.com, and November 5th, Target in-store. Although I know some of you have already been asking me about this line that you've already been seeing in-store, so some stores have gotten it out early. And it says included in your package is a sampling of our 30-item collection. And there are a couple of other things that I didn't incorporate into this look that I want to mention. One of those things is this Amber Eyes palette. What do we see here? Is this a total like modern Renaissance inspired palette? I think so. In fact, I think inspired might be putting it a little generously. I think this is kind of a copycat palette here, but swatched out, this does look really beautiful. There are a lot of mattes in this palette, which might explain why I like it. And if I have the chance, and I probably will, I'm gonna insert a little look using this so you can actually see it going on, but this was not listed among the holiday things. This was just kind of like an extra thing that they threw in. Sorry, my lighting is not ideal for this part here. I couldn't physically walk my large light over here because I may have sprained or done something to my ankle last night on Halloween night that I'm not sure. It's just really hard to get around right now. But I did want to show you this Amber Eyes palette and let you see how the shadows actually go on here, because seeing this, I thought this might have been one of the most promising things that Profusion sent over. But this is a $6.99 eye palette. In keeping with what I've seen in a lot of these other palettes, the mattes are really, really good. The shimmers, you know, in the look I did today, I thought, well, they're not the best I've ever used, but they seem to perform a little bit better than what I saw in my other palettes. So that was exciting. So I want to just walk you through this look real quick that I did. It's nothing fancy, but again, I just wanted to see how the shadows went on. So I primed my eyes, and then I used the color called Outgoing, a kind of a peachy, deep peachy matte all throughout the crease. And I used the brush provided for some of these steps as a double-ended brush. Then I added a little bit of Fearless to my outer corner too, and got that all blended out. And then I worked in the dark rusty red called Outspoken into the outer corner as well, and got the edges blended out. I used the matte cream shade called Ideal. I used that up under the brow. I patted the color called Chatty, this light pearly shade with some shimmer on about the inner 2/3 of my lid. And again, I thought it went on better than some of the shimmers in the other palettes. Not the best I've ever used, but it certainly didn't pack on in a really flaky, like hard to manage way. And then I used the color called Devoted, which is a really dark, rich berry. I patted that on the outer part of my lid. And then I wanted to see if this darkest shade, this dark brown called Cozy, could actually really anchor the look and give a lot of contrast. And I thought it did a nice job. Again, the mattes are really good in here, so I used a small brush with that. And then I used Thoughtful, that's that deeper shimmer mix of mauve and brown, worked that onto my lower lash line. Didn't do any liner with this look. I really wanted you to see the eyeshadow, so I just curled my lashes, put on some L'Oreal Lash Paradise mascara, and you know, pretty happy with the look, I would say. I think this is a very affordable palette. I think it's a super affordable alternative to the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. Just something to keep an eye out for, and definitely one of the more impressive things that I saw that the brand sent to me. And as I look at some of the other things too, just the format of the palettes, some of the shade choices, just the way the little shade names look and everything on there, it seems to be a very Anastasia Beverly Hills inspired group of products. For example, they have this other palette, which is kind of neat. It's got this kind of squishy, nice feeling exterior on it, and it's a 32-piece face palette in here. And it does have not a clear sheet, but a little clear tray that comes over the top. You guys know how I feel about that. But anyways, what we're looking at in here shadow-wise actually reminded me a lot at a glance of the ABH Mario Master palette that was out like around, I think it was last year at this time. Gosh, it seems like a long time ago. But it's those kinds of shades down here, really earthy, a lot of warm shades, just a lot of neutrals happening there. A couple of highlights up here, some brow powders and a wax, and then you've got two bronzers, which the bronzers in this palette seem to be so much lighter than the bronzers in the blush combo palette. These barely would show up on my skin. I mean, these are both very similar to like Benefit's Hoola Light, so if you're super fair skinned, you might get a bit of a result from these, but me, not so much. You got a couple of blushes and a highlight, and then two really decent brushes that actually hold into this palette kind of nicely. One could be a nice highlight, blush, under eye setting type brush, and we've got just a bit of shedding happening off of this, but it is a nice soft blender type brush. But much like with that larger eye palette that I used today, I noticed that some of these shimmers, like the ones in this second row, just weren't giving me enough color payoff for something that looks golden or bronzy. You want that to really shine and catch the light, and they weren't doing that so much. Some of the deeper shades were a little bit better about that, and again, the mattes were really nice. But of the things I did use, the mixed metals lips, I mean, you be the judge. Are you liking the look of what's going on here? I really did like the quality of the lip pencil. I thought it went on easily. It's a nice retractable pencil. I'm not the biggest fan of metallic finishes in a matte dry down type of formula, just because already, you know, this has only been on my lips for maybe 40 minutes at this point, and it's already just starting to look a little bit slightly patchy, slightly worn, you know. I think it would have been a more flawless look if these were just matte lip colors as opposed to having that metallic finish. So not necessarily my cup of tea, but somebody out there might like it. The brow palette I thought was quite good. If you're interested in trying a series of brow powders with the wax, with the pencil, and a decent brush to apply it all, you might be into this. This is $6.99 and is part of the holiday collection. The Strobe and Glow palette, I mean, intense highlights, super intense. I'm also seeing the ABH kind of inspiration happening here because they do a wide range of highlights. They've got some of these sort of bronzy highlights. I've tried one Anastasia Beverly Hills highlight palette, and it's the one called Sun Dipped, and I do see some similarities with these more bronzy shades. It's a nice range. If you're really into something like this, maybe you want to check this out because pigmentation wise it does not disappoint. The blush and bronze kit, really wanted to love this because I like the blushes a lot and I like this glowy golden highlight up here. It's just that the bronzers weren't delivering enough for me, and they seemed as though, judging by a swatch, they would be deeper than what was included in that whole multi-palette, and they are, but yet they still seem to sort of dust away on my skin. They just don't really adhere. I don't know what that's about, so can't really give my fullest recommendation to that product. The Sultry palette, I would say overall I'm surprised by the quality of this. I mean, I really do like my eye look today. I was just disappointed that some of the lighter shimmery shades couldn't really give me everything I needed in this look to really pop and glow. But the mattes, I mean, really nice. I wish they would have just put out a flat out all matte palette and people would be really impressed. But again, they're saying included in your package is a sampling of our 30 item collection. So perhaps the most important thing that this whole, you know, situation has established here for me is interest. I'm interested. I want to see more. I think this brand definitely has some potential, and I could see myself uncovering some hidden gems down the road. This will not be the last, though, of my drugstore related holiday gift things. I'm just starting to get into some more things in that price range. I feel like the high-end holiday collections every year, those start coming out in like late August. But the drugstore stuff, you kind of have to wait till that trickles out to the stores. So I will be doing much more on low-cost holiday palettes, kits, and that kind of thing. Thank you guys so much for your time. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!